So, for those of you that are not aware, Craigslist personals section of their website has been shut down. There was a bill passed as of last month, HR 1865, that was covering the, I guess it's like a further scoping of the DMCA. If you're not aware of what the DMCA is, this was, around the turn of the century, the U.S. Congress passed this bill, the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, that put responsibility over traffic of copyrighted materials onto the internet service providers that were hosting such criminal activity, right? So, like, whenever you get those little notices in your mail, they're like, yo, hey, you need to quit downloading movies and shit. That's what the that's what the DMCA is all about, right? And when we're talking about child trafficking here, so that's what HR 1865 was covering, responsibility over child trafficking over the services like Craigslist and things like that. So if people are using things like Craigslist to facilitate child sex trafficking, then liability of said criminal activities is going to be put onto Craigslist. And thus, Craigslist took the personal section of their website down. Right, so, on the outside, this seems like a really, really noble, good thing, right? Like, we're trying to fight child trafficking, right? We're trying to make people more responsible. And if you've ever browsed through the personal section of Craigslist, you might think, well, hell, this is probably a pretty good thing. Even the most liberal of us can probably pick up some pretty cringy crap in the personal section of Craigslist. There's just some depraved desperation going on there. So, obviously, it's a place that needs to be looked at, and I can understand why Craigslist would not even want to try to bother, dealing with that kind of liability. And so, it makes sense that they shut this down. I completely understand that side of it, but I'm still really irked by this because a friend of mine and I have been working on putting together a series of videos where we browse through the misconnection section of Craigslist, and we've been putting a lot of work into this. It was pretty funny. I was pretty happy with it. He was pretty happy with it. It's been taking a little while, and this was a particularly personal case for myself and I, because my friend has been recently kind of overwhelmed with a seizure disorder that he's developed over the past few years, and it's kind of wreaking complete havoc on his life, and he has recently had to been put on disability, and we were trying to find some kind of way that he could bring some sort of prosperity to his life in any way, shape, or form. And after weeks and weeks and weeks of trying to put this crap together, the rug was literally pulled right out from underneath our feet last night when we went on to Craigslist's personal section and were greeted with this little nice sort of like error 404 code kind of page not found little greeting where they politely told us that the HR 1865, the FOSTA Act, had effectively shut down the personal section of Craigslist. So, what is my real problem with this, you might be asking? Like, alright, so, I personally have had a bit of history with net neutrality and the FCC getting in the middle of media communications, broadcasting over the internet specifically. Because I, for one, have appreciated the freedom and the liberty that I've been given with the internet to express myself. And I understand that this is something that's really only unique to the United States. That there's a lot of places. There's a case going on right now. I think in the UK where a man has been convicted of basically like thought crimes, being grossly offensive, I think was the charge against him, but he's facing jail time now over this. I understand that the freedom of the internet is something that I've only enjoyed really as an American, and that this is this great luxury that I can sort of take for granted and such. But it's really it's a freedom of speech is a right that every person should be given. And while I understand the liability issue of all of this, I do think that it is grossly unfair to put responsibility of such kind of crimes or infractions on the service providers themselves. This is putting a lot of undue responsibility on websites like Craigslist, just like it did with the DMCA and internet service providers. Buddy, look out, boy. It really puts a lot of undue responsibility on service providers that are merely trying to create a connection point between two people, right? So, like, it's sort of like saying that anybody that uses a telephone to hire a prostitute is complicit in the crime that's being committed of prostitution, whatever. If prostitution is a crime, say someone were to use a telephone to call up and order the purchase of a child sex slave, then putting responsibility of said, infraction on the phone service providers. I mean, can you imagine how absurd that's going to get, and how sticky that's going to become? Because it's not only going to, it's essentially going to shut down the phone service if you try to broad scope that kind of action. And while it's really, really noble in some sense to try to do something about these things, of course, child trafficking is a horrible fucking thing. I mean, I can't even, if anything that this bill were to do were to hinder child trafficking in any way, shape, or form, then hell, it's a wash. I don't care. For myself. Any kind of benefit that I could have gotten, this was a great little idea for a show, you guys. Any potential for any kind of income that I could have gotten, or any kind of gain that I could have gotten from producing this show, I totally would give any of it up for the idea that maybe some child out there is going to be protected from this bill. But the sad fact of the matter is I don't know how effective it's going to be. I think really ultimately it's going to just put more blockades, more kind of like hurdles in the way of people that are providing services over the internet that everybody uses for extremely, harmless means. It really kind of, we're slowly but surely weeding away at what the internet is, or we're whittling away at everything that it was, and we're gonna create. Ultimately, it's just gonna be. Years ago, when people were complaining about net neutrality and things like that, they were talking about how the internet service providers were going to try to package the internet into a little pre-packaged, bundle that you could buy like you do your television service packages and things like that, with a tiered package and service package, and that is what would give the FCC control over such communications and things like that. I mean, really, basically, what's happening here is the people that have a lot of money, the media companies that have enjoyed a level of control over social development for many, many years, they're desperately trying to influence the growth of free media over the internet, and this is really just another way of wrangling in control over services over the internet. This is just a way of somebody out there trying to gain some level of control, and they're whipping up support for this thing through sympathy for children that are being abused, which definitely deserves concern and consideration, thought, and action towards, stopping this. But the unfortunate fact of the matter is that you're never going to stop child abuse. So an effort to a broad sweeping kind of effort to regulate control over other people's actions in an effort to stop such a thing is really a futile effort, and you're only going to hurt other people in the process. It's perfectly reasonable to try such things, but you really have to look at the broader scope of what you're looking at. You know, when you widen that scope, so to speak, when you're, it's just there's too many variables that you really need to be aware of. That, you know, when you look at I hate the fact that we've been experiencing an extreme amount of school shootings and completely uncalled for violence in schools. But the way that you know, if you've been watching any of the CNN town hall meetings featuring some of these students, and I can't remember the boy's name, but he's become something of a meme. You've seen the boy with like Hitler mustaches drawn on the kid, and it's these people are absolutely right. Like, propaganda is propaganda. It's absolutely terrible that boys. It's absolutely terrible that life happens, but the unfortunate fact of the matter is that there's no way that we can use the government to regulate life to the point that there is no more suffering. What that's going to take, as you know, ask me any day of the week, how do you fix the problems of mankind? It's going to take personal responsibility. It's going to take accountability. It's going to take you standing up yourself and doing something about this. You know, there's been that debate over, like, do you want to arm the children, or do you want to arm the children? Do you want to arm the teachers? No, I want to arm the children. I want to arm everybody. I want everybody to be prepared for this. You know, we've got 9-year-olds playing Call of Duty, and we think that's a bad thing. Well, hell, maybe it's not such a bad thing when people are storming into their schools with guns. This is the reality that we have to face and that we've been ignoring for a long time. And the unfortunate thing is that the fabric of society is being pulled apart at the seams. You know, we've pushed ourselves too far. You know, this culture that we have has continued to compound itself and it grow within itself and foster itself within these little communities, like, you know, community groups on Facebook or social media outlets all over the internet have basically been creating an outlet for corrupt ideas to foster, and echo chambers to allow these ideas to resonate to the point that they are actually disrupting the society around them in ways that they probably didn't intend to originally, in ways that they probably can't foresee, that I don't think any of us can really foresee. I don't think there's any of us that can correctly predict the future, you know, obviously, and if there were, you know, hit me up and we're going to hit the stock market. But that's just how that's how it goes when you're trying to socially engineer society. You can't, you know, there's no level of control that you can attain that's going to be able to control every individual. So people are going to be able to get through your cracks. You're going to try to pass these bills like HR 1865, and you're going to put responsibility on all these websites that are fostering this kind of thing, but do you think it's really going to stop it? No. Because the people who are actually committing these crimes don't care about whose responsibility this is being put on. No, they're using this service just in the way that they're using these children. These people are criminals, and they're going to use whatever outlet they can to enable themselves to do whatever they want to do. That's just how this works. They're going to speak in code. They're going to use alternate service. It doesn't, you know, they'll find ways around it, just like, you know, with the DMCA. You know, when when Napster first started getting cracked down on, and you had to resort to other peer-to-peer services to download stuff like that. There were codes and things that we used to kind of, and there's just that those levels of criminality. We're dealing with some of the most desperate and despicable people on the planet. Okay? You can draw a line in the sand, and I might say, okay, I'll quit stealing your music when you threaten me with that, but we're dealing with people that are the most depraved people on the planet. Their goal is to try to find ways around your ways of stopping them, and all this is going to do is hinder people, good, innocent people in the wake, right? So, what are the long-term effects of this bill? I don't know. Is it going to stop child trafficking? I don't know. Is it a good thing that if it does? Of course. But I can't say that this is with any certainty going to do anything positive other than hinder people's ability to communicate and interact with each other over the internet. And this is just yet another further regulation of that. And I have to say, as of right now, I don't approve of it myself. I mean, who am I? Nobody. Who should care about my opinion? Probably nobody. But is it something that you should maybe consider? I don't know. I'm just... These are things that I'm worried about as I'm stumbling through my existence here and stumble upon this, what, like I said, is essentially an error 404 code. U.S. Constitution just passed H.R. 1865 FOSTA, seeking to subject websites to criminal and civil liability when third parties users misuse online personals unlawfully. Any tool or service can be misused. We can't take such risk without jeopardizing all our services, so we are respectfully taking Craigslist personals offline. Hopefully we can bring them back someday. To the millions of spouses and partners and couples who met through Craigslist, we just wish you every happiness. And so do I. Might not agree with what y'all were doing on there, but I got a good laugh out of it every once in a while. Thanks for providing us with the years of entertainment, and hopefully, Craigslist's website will reenact the personal section again sometime soon. We'll see. Anyway, thank you for listening to me rant, and any thoughts and considerations that you can put towards this. If you have any, thoughts of your own, please leave a comment, post your own video, do whatever you can to try to make people aware of what's going on around them and get involved in the process, because this is the kind of thing that affects all of us in any number of ways. We could have provided you guys with such hours of entertainment. I'm telling you, man, we just sit here and we've been making each other laugh with some of these misconnections for the past several years and casual encounters and so on, just the depravity of humanity. But, if you miss that kind of entertainment, let's say something about it. Let's get involved. Let's think about other ways to maybe minimize and stop things like child trafficking, other than just these broad scope attempts to stop these kind of things and regulating the internet. Thank you for listening. Have a good night or day or whatever time you're listening to this. Be safe.